The wedding should have felt beautiful. Instead, it felt like a public execution. Amina Mensa stood beneath crystal chandeliers in a luxury Seoul hotel ballroom, her ivory gown glowing under the lights. Hundreds of guests filled the room. Nobody smiled at her. They smiled at him. Kang Min-Jae, the billionaire heir. The man who looked as though he'd rather be anywhere else. His black tailored suit fit perfectly. The tattoos that climbed beneath his sleeves occasionally appeared when he adjusted his cuffs. Cold, controlled, dangerous. Amina felt every stare, every whisper, every judgment, because everyone knew the truth. Min-Jae hadn't married her for love. He married her for revenge. Years ago, a business scandal involving her late father had nearly destroyed his family. Now this marriage was the final move, the perfect humiliation, the perfect punishment. When the officiant announced them husband and wife, applause filled the room. Min-Jae didn't even look at her. Not once. Not during the vows. Not during the kiss he refused to give. Not during the reception. By the end of the evening, Amina understood something terrifying. This wasn't a marriage. It was a sentence, and she was expected to serve it quietly. As guests celebrated around them, Min-Jae finally spoke. His voice was low, emotionless. "Don't expect anything from me." Amina slowly turned. His eyes remained on the crowd. "I won't be a husband." The words settled heavily between them. Then he walked away, leaving his new bride standing alone in a room full of people. And for the first time that night, Amina wondered how long a heart could survive being unwanted. 3 months later, nothing had changed. Not really. Amina lived in one wing of the sprawling Kang estate overlooking the Han River. Min-Jae lived in another. The mansion was enormous, beautiful, silent. It felt less like a home and more like a luxury museum where two strangers happened to share an address. Most mornings, Amina ate breakfast alone. Most evenings, she dined alone. The staff treated her respectfully. The family did not. At a private dinner one Friday evening, Min-Jae's aunt decided to remind everyone of her place. "Some women marry into wealth," she said while sipping wine. "Others simply get lucky." A few guests laughed. Not loudly, just enough. The kind of laughter designed to wound. Amina kept her expression calm. Years of disappointment had taught her how. Across the table, Min-Jae heard every word. He said nothing. His silence hurt more than the insult, because silence felt like agreement. The dinner continued. The conversation moved on, but the humiliation lingered, like smoke after a fire. Later that night, Amina stood alone on a balcony overlooking the city. Seoul glittered beneath her. Thousands of lights. Millions of people. Yet she had never felt lonelier. The balcony door opened behind her. Min-Jae stepped outside. His sleeves were rolled halfway up his forearms, exposing intricate black tattoos winding across toned skin. Powerful, controlled, dangerous, just like the man wearing them. For a moment, neither spoke. Cold air moved between them. Then he said quietly, "You should have defended yourself." Amina laughed softly, not because it was funny, because it wasn't. She turned toward him. Would it have mattered? His jaw tightened. The question landed harder than he expected. For the first time, he looked directly at her. Really looked. Not at the woman he blamed. Not at the daughter of a man he hated. At her. And what he saw unsettled him. Because despite everything, she wasn't bitter. She wasn't manipulative. She wasn't fighting him. She was simply tired. And for the first time since their wedding day, a crack appeared in the wall he'd spent years building. The crack should have disappeared. It didn't. For the next several days, Min-Jae found himself noticing things he had ignored before. Small things. Dangerous things. The kind that made a person human. One morning he arrived home earlier than expected after a meeting. The mansion was unusually quiet. As he crossed the main hall, he heard laughter. Soft. Genuine. The sound stopped him. He followed it toward the estate's sunroom. Amina sat beside one of the elderly housekeepers. The woman was recovering from a recent surgery and moved more slowly than before. Amina was helping her arrange flower stems into crystal vases. Neither woman noticed him. "You always choose the brightest flowers," the housekeeper teased. Amina smiled. "They make people feel hopeful." The older woman shook her head. "No, you do." Min-Jae stood motionless, watching. The interaction was effortless. No performance, no audience, no advantage to gain. Just kindness. Real kindness. And somehow that bothered him more than anger would have, because it challenged everything he believed about her. That evening, he attended a charity gala hosted by one of Seoul's most influential families. Amina attended as his wife. The title felt strange, especially since he rarely treated her like one. She wore a dark emerald gown that caught the ballroom light whenever she moved. Elegant, graceful, unforgettable. Several guests greeted Min-Jae first, then immediately ignored Amina. Others acknowledged her only out of obligation. She handled every slight with quiet dignity, never complaining, never reacting, never asking him for help, and somehow that bothered him too. As the evening progressed, Min-Jae stepped away from a conversation with investors. From across the ballroom, he spotted Amina standing alone near a floor-to-ceiling window. A familiar ache settled unexpectedly in his chest. Then someone approached her. A man, tall, well-dressed, confident. The stranger smiled warmly. Amina smiled back, not politely, genuinely. The sight hit Min-Jae harder than it should have, because in 3 months of marriage, he had never seen her smile like that at him. And before he could stop himself, he started walking toward them. Min-Jae crossed the ballroom before he realized what he was doing. The orchestra continued playing. Crystal chandeliers shimmered overhead. Conversations flowed around him, yet his attention remained fixed on one thing. Amina, and the man standing beside her. The stranger said something that made her laugh softly, not the polite smile she offered at formal events. A real laugh, warm, unguarded. The sound unsettled him. By the time Min-Jae reached them, the man had already noticed his approach. Amina, Min-Jae said calmly. Too calmly. Her smile faded slightly. Not out of fear, out of surprise. Min-Jae, the stranger extended his hand. Daniel Thompson. Min-Jae shook it, firmly. Daniel's grip remained equally steady. Neither man smiled. Amina immediately sensed the tension, the kind that existed before either person admitted it. We studied together in London, Daniel explained, a long time ago. Amina nodded. He was one of my closest friends. Closest friends. The words lingered, longer than they should have. The rest of the evening became strangely uncomfortable. Everywhere Min-Jae looked, Daniel seemed to be nearby, talking to Amina, making her smile, listening when she spoke, noticing things, the simple things, the things Min-Jae had ignored for months. For the first time, he began seeing the marriage through someone else's eyes, and what he saw wasn't flattering. A beautiful woman, a loyal wife, a kind person, standing alone while her husband remained emotionally absent. The realization irritated him, mostly because it was true. Later that night, the gala ended. Guests slowly departed. Luxury vehicles lined the entrance. Amina stepped outside and adjusted the shawl around her shoulders. Daniel followed. Can I call you sometime? He asked. Amina smiled. Of course. Before she could say anything else, another voice interrupted. She's married. Both turned. Min-Jae stood beside the waiting car, expression unreadable, hands in his pockets. Daniel raised an eyebrow. So she is. The silence that followed felt strangely personal. Then Daniel smiled politely and walked away, leaving Amina and Min-Jae alone. For several seconds neither spoke. Then Amina opened the car door, and just before she entered, Min-Jae asked a question he had no right to ask. How close were you two? Amina froze, slowly turning toward him. For the first time in months, her eyes showed anger, and Min-Jae suddenly realized he might not like her answer. Amina stared at Min-Jae, the city lights reflected across the polished black car between them. His question hung in the air. How close were you two? For a moment, she almost laughed. Not because it was amusing, because it was unbelievable. 3 months. 3 months of emotional distance. 3 months of silence. 3 months of being treated like a reminder of a grudge. And now he was asking questions, as though he suddenly cared. Daniel had already disappeared into the crowd of departing guests. Only she and Min-Jae remained. You don't get to ask me that. Her voice was calm. That somehow made the words hit harder. Min-Jae's jaw tightened. I was asking a simple question. No. Amina stepped closer. You were asking a question you haven't earned the right to ask. The words landed cleanly, without cruelty, without shouting, just truth. And somehow truth hurt more. The drive home was silent. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Neither looked at the other. The distance between them felt larger than ever. Yet something had changed. For the first time, Min-Jae wasn't indifferent. He was bothered, and he hated it. The following afternoon, Amina attended a charity foundation meeting in Central Seoul. The foundation supported educational programs for young women. It was one of the few places where she felt useful, valued, seen. As the meeting ended, she gathered her notes. A familiar voice stopped her. Amina, she turned. Daniel, smiling warmly, holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this? Amina laughed softly. You're still trying to rescue people. Only the stubborn ones. They walked together toward the building entrance, talking easily, comfortably, like people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Across the street, inside a waiting luxury SUV, Min-Jae watched. He wasn't supposed to be there. His meeting had ended early. That was all. At least that was the excuse he gave himself. Then he saw Daniel hand Amina a coffee, saw her smile, saw the way she relaxed around him, and something dark twisted inside his chest, a feeling unfamiliar, unwelcome, possessive. As Daniel prepared to leave, he leaned closer. His voice carried farther than intended, far enough for Min-Jae to hear. My love, don't forget dinner Friday. Amina smiled. I won't. Inside the SUV, Min-Jae went completely still. The world seemed to narrow. 1 sentence, 2 words. My love. And for the first time since their marriage began, jealousy stopped being a possibility. It became a problem. Min-Jae didn't sleep that night. The words followed him everywhere. My love. Simple, casual, intimate. The kind of phrase people used when affection had become natural. The kind of phrase nobody had ever used with Amina in front of him before. And the part that bothered him most? She hadn't looked uncomfortable. She'd smiled, as though hearing it felt normal, as though it belonged. The next morning, the Kang estate felt unusually quiet. Min-Jae sat at the long breakfast table, untouched coffee cooling beside him. His thoughts kept drifting back to the same image. Daniel handing her coffee, Daniel making her laugh, Daniel calling her my love. The sound of footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. Amina entered the dining room, elegant as always. Composed as always, she stopped when she noticed him. For a brief second, surprise flashed across her face. Normally he was already gone by this hour. Good morning. The greeting was polite, nothing more. Min-Jae studied her. You have dinner plans Friday? It wasn't a question. Amina slowly set down the folder she was carrying. I do. The answer irritated him more than it should have. With Daniel. She raised an eyebrow. You already know that. The silence stretched. Amina watched him carefully. Then something dawned on her. And for the first time, amusement flickered in her eyes. Are you jealous? Min-Jae nearly laughed. Of him? The denial came too quickly, too sharply. Amina noticed. So did he. That evening, Min-Jae attended a private investor gathering at one of Seoul's most exclusive hotels. Normally, business distracted him. Tonight, it didn't. Every conversation felt unfinished. Every presentation felt irrelevant. His attention remained elsewhere. On her. Halfway through the event, one of the investors approached, an older man with connections throughout the city. I saw your wife recently. Min-Jae looked up immediately. The reaction was automatic. The investor smiled. Interesting woman. Min-Jae said nothing. The man continued. Daniel Thompson seems very fond of her. Something cold settled in Min-Jae's chest. How fond? The investor chuckled. Fond enough that people are starting to talk. Later that night, Min-Jae stood alone in his office at the estate. The city lights shimmered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. His phone rested on the desk. A single decision away. One call. One question. One line he had no right to cross. Yet his hand reached for the phone anyway. Because for the first time since marrying Amina, he was terrified of losing someone he never intended to keep. Min-Jae stared at his phone for nearly an hour. He never made the call. Not because he didn't want answers. Because he wasn't sure he wanted the truth. If Daniel loved Amina, that was one problem. If Amina loved Daniel back, that was something else entirely. Something he wasn't prepared to face. Friday arrived faster than expected. The dinner he couldn't stop thinking about. The dinner that wasn't his business. The dinner he somehow knew the exact time and location of. By 7:30 that evening, Min-Jae found himself standing inside the lobby of one of Seoul's most exclusive hotels. He told himself he was there for a business meeting. The lie sounded ridiculous even in his own head. Across the restaurant, Amina sat beneath soft golden lighting. She wore a navy silk dress. Simple, elegant, beautiful. Daniel sat across from her. The two looked relaxed, comfortable, like people who had known each other for years. Because they had. Min-Jae remained hidden behind a row of decorative trees overlooking the dining area. A position no billionaire CEO should ever have found himself in. Yet there he was, watching, waiting, hating every second. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel reached into his jacket. Min-Jae's entire body went still. A small velvet box appeared. His stomach dropped. The restaurant noise seemed to disappear. For one terrifying second, he thought he knew what was coming. A proposal, an ending, a confirmation that he had waited too long. But when Daniel opened the box, Amina immediately laughed, a genuine laugh, warm and familiar. Inside wasn't a ring. It was an old silver friendship charm, the same one their university group had shared years ago. Daniel shook his head. You thought I'd forgotten? Amina smiled. Honestly, yes. Relief crashed into Min-Jae so suddenly it almost embarrassed him. Then Daniel's expression softened. My love. The nickname came again. Min-Jae's jaw tightened. Amina rolled her eyes. You know everyone misunderstands that. Daniel laughed. That's because nobody knows the story. He leaned back. My late grandmother called every person she cared about my love. Amina smiled quietly. And after she passed away, you never stopped. Some traditions deserve to survive. For the first time, Min-Jae felt foolish, jealous, possessive, and completely wrong. Yet as he watched Amina's smile fade into something more thoughtful, Daniel suddenly asked a question that changed everything. Do you love your husband? The smile disappeared from her face. The silence that followed lasted several long seconds, and from across the room, Min-Jae stopped breathing. The silence stretched. Daniel didn't rush her, didn't rescue her from the question. He simply waited. Across the restaurant, Min-Jae waited too. Though unlike Daniel, he wasn't supposed to be there. Every muscle in his body felt locked, because for the first time since their marriage began, he genuinely wanted to know the answer. Amina lowered her eyes briefly, then looked out toward the city lights beyond the restaurant windows. That's a difficult question. Daniel smiled sadly. The hardest ones usually are. She traced her fingertip along the rim of her glass, thinking, choosing her words carefully, the way people did when the truth mattered. Finally, she spoke. I don't think he knows me. Min-Jae felt the words like a physical impact, not because they were cruel, because they were fair, painfully fair. Daniel remained quiet. Amina continued, when we got married, he had already decided who I was. A small smile appeared, but it wasn't a happy one. He never gave me a chance to be anyone else. Across the restaurant, guilt settled heavily inside Min-Jae's chest. For months, he had blamed her for a history she didn't create, punished her for choices she never made, refused to see the difference. Then Daniel asked softly, and despite that, Amina looked surprised. Despite what? Despite everything. His voice remained gentle. Do you care about him? The question lingered. This time, her answer came more quickly. Too quickly. And that told its own story. Yes. Min-Jae froze. Amina laughed quietly at herself, a little embarrassed, a little frustrated, which is ridiculous. Daniel smiled knowingly. Most feelings are. For the first time in months, Min-Jae saw himself through her eyes. Not as a billionaire, not as a powerful man, not as the heir to an empire, but as a husband. And he hated what he saw. A woman who had shown him patience, grace, understanding, while receiving almost nothing in return. Later that night, Amina returned to the estate. The mansion was unusually quiet. As she entered the main living room, she stopped. Min-Jae was waiting, standing beside the fireplace, his sleeves rolled up, tattooed forearms visible, expression unreadable. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then he surprised her. I owe you an apology. Amina blinked, certain she had misheard. Because in all the months since their wedding, Kang Min-Jae had never apologized for anything. And judging by the look in his eyes, this was only the beginning. Amina stood motionless. The fireplace cast a warm glow across the room. For a second, she genuinely wondered if she had heard him correctly. An apology? From Kang Min-Jae, the man who rarely explained himself, the man who treated vulnerability like a weakness, the man who had spent months keeping her at a distance. I owe you an apology. This time he repeated it, slowly, carefully, as though the words felt unfamiliar. Amina set her purse down. You don't have to do this. A shadow crossed his face. Yes. His voice was quiet. I do. For several moments, neither spoke. The silence felt different tonight. Not cold, not hostile, honest. Min-Jae looked directly at her, something he seemed to be doing more often lately. I blamed you for things that were never yours to carry. Amina's chest tightened. You were angry. That's not an excuse. The answer came immediately, and that surprised her because it sounded like accountability, real accountability, not pride disguised as regret. Over the following weeks, something shifted. Not all at once, but steadily. Min-Jae began joining her for breakfast. At first, the conversations were awkward, then less awkward, then surprisingly easy. He asked questions about her work, about her childhood, about her favorite books. Small things, ordinary things, the kinds of things husbands should know, the kinds of things he should have asked months ago. And slowly, Amina began answering. Then came the Charity Foundation Gala, one of the most prestigious events in Seoul. Business leaders, politicians, media personalities, the entire city seemed to be there. Amina arrived alone. Min-Jae had been delayed by a board meeting. At least that was the plan. Inside the ballroom, familiar whispers followed her. Some people still viewed her as the outsider, the woman who didn't belong, the woman who married into power. Then someone made the mistake of saying it out loud. A socialite laughed softly. Lucky marriage. Several nearby guests smiled. Amina recognized the look immediately, the same look she'd endured for months. Before she could respond, another voice interrupted. Calm. Powerful. Impossible to ignore. There's nothing lucky about earning someone's respect. The room went silent. Every head turned. Min-Jae stood at the top of the grand staircase. Black tuxedo, tattooed forearms partially visible beneath slightly rolled sleeves. His gaze never left Amina, not once. Then in front of everyone, he crossed the ballroom, ignored every executive, every investor, every important guest, and stopped beside his wife. His wife. The title suddenly sounded different, stronger, intentional. Then Min-Jae did something no one expected. He offered her his hand, publicly, proudly, choosing her. And as cameras flashed around them, Amina realized something extraordinary. For the first time since their wedding, she wasn't standing alone. The applause started slowly, then spread across the ballroom. Amina stood beside Min-Jae, her hand resting in his. For months she had imagined what it would feel like to be acknowledged, to be defended, to be chosen. Yet somehow reality felt different, better, because it wasn't performative, it wasn't forced. When she looked at him, she saw something she had never seen before. Certainty. The weeks that followed changed everything. Not overnight, not magically, but honestly. For the first time since their marriage, Min-Jae stopped treating their relationship like a punishment and started treating it like a choice. They shared breakfasts, late-night conversations, quiet walks through the estate gardens. The walls between them slowly disappeared. Not because they were forced down, because they were no longer needed. For the first time, Amina saw the man beneath the anger. And Min-Jae finally saw the woman he had refused to know. One rainy evening, they attended a private family gathering. Many of the same relatives who had once dismissed Amina were there, including the aunt who had publicly humiliated her. The atmosphere shifted the moment Amina entered beside Min-Jae. People noticed. The way he stayed near her, the way he listened when she spoke, the way his eyes found her even in crowded rooms. This time, nobody dared make jokes. Nobody dared whisper, because the difference was obvious. The woman they once underestimated now occupied a place nobody could challenge. As the evening ended, Min-Jae requested everyone's attention. The room fell silent. Amina looked at him in confusion. He turned toward her. Then, to the shock of everyone present, he lowered himself onto one knee. Gasps echoed throughout the room. Even Amina forgot how to breathe. Min-Jae looked up at her. Not like a billionaire. Not like a man protecting his pride, like a man protecting his heart. Amina Mensa. His voice was steady. But I need to say this publicly. Emotion tightened in his throat. I married you for revenge. The room became completely silent. I thought hating your family would make me feel whole. He shook his head. It didn't. His eyes never left hers. You gave me kindness when I didn't deserve it. You gave me patience when I offered none. You saw something worth saving in me long before I saw it myself. Amina's eyes filled with tears. Around them, nobody moved, nobody spoke. Everyone understood they were witnessing something rare. A man surrendering his pride. Completely. Min-Jae reached into his pocket, not for a ring. She already wore one. Instead, he removed the original marriage contract, the symbol of everything that had started wrong. Then he tore it in half, and again, until nothing remained. A collective breath swept through the room. His gaze remained fixed on hers. If you choose me now, he said softly, let it be for who I am, not because of a contract, not because of revenge. A tear slipped down Amina's cheek. Then she smiled. The same smile that had first unsettled him months ago. The same smile that now felt like home. Min-Jae. Her voice trembled slightly. "You're late." Laughter rippled through the room. Even Min-Jae smiled. Then she extended her hand and helped him stand. The applause that followed was louder than before, but neither of them paid attention, because for the first time since their wedding day, they were looking only at each other. No revenge, no resentment, no distance, just two people who had finally found their way to the truth. And as Min-Jae wrapped an arm around her shoulders and led her toward the ballroom doors, Amina realized something beautiful. The man who once refused to touch her now couldn't imagine letting her go. Before we say goodbye, if you enjoyed this story, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new romance from Afro-Korean Diaries. And tell me in the comments, could you forgive someone who married you for revenge if they truly changed? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, take care.